The story begins with public prosecutor Zen Seizaki, who investigates the Agra's case alleging that the Japan's superior pharmaceutical company is promoting a defective drug. There are allegations that 4 universities have provided falsified test results. During the investigation, he finds a sealed document in a file which includes blood stains, hair, skin, fingernails, and the letter F is written repeatedly on the paper. The material is traced to the anesthetist Shin Inaba, but when they go to his apartment, they find him dead from an apparent anesthetic overdose. Investigation reveals that he has had 2 regular visitors, an unknown woman and Tamikazu Ono, an associate of the Secretary General of the Liberal Justice Party, Ruikiro Namaru. Namaru is a favored candidate in the mayoral elections for the newly created independent city of Shiniki, the testing ground for a new nation. Seizaki asks his old friend and journalist Ariyoshi Hanta to investigate Namaru. Seizaki and his assistant, Atsuhiko Fumio, follows Ono and a young woman to a club where they meet Shinzo Chijima, head of the Tokyo Construction Contractors Federation. When they leave, Fumio follows the woman to her apartment. Seizaki then receives a suicide message from Fumio and he races to the apartment building. When he arrives, he finds Fumio hanging on the balcony, dead. He does not believe that Fumio committed suicide and later questions a woman named Emiko Hiramatsu, who was seen with Ono visiting Inaba. She reveals very little except that she voluntarily has intercourse with men as arranged by Ono. She agrees to sign a statement on the condition that Seizaki tells her about himself, and she interrogates him about his life at length. However, when he leaves her with Officer Okuda, she dupes him and leaves the building. His further investigations reveal that Namaru and his rival Kaika Itsuki appear to be connected. When Seizaki prepares to present his report on the investigation to his superiors, he is shocked to find out that Namaru is present. Namaru explains to Seizaki that Shiniki is actually an experiment for testing new laws and regulations without the restrictions of the existing system, and that his opponent Kaika Itsuki will become its first mayor. However, Police Chief Yasutaka Morinaga and Namaru asks Seizaki to continue his investigation into the deaths of Inaba and Fumio. The next day, Itsuki and his advisors goes missing, and Morinaga suspects that the woman Ai Magase, who was brought in by Itsuki, is behind the deaths and disappearances. She apparently has the ability to completely change her appearance and was also the woman Seizaki interviewed as Emiko Hiramatsu. Suddenly, a news bulletin announces that up to 60 people are standing dangerously on the rooftop of a multi-story building. Seizaki receives information from Ben Minton that Inaba was researching a new drug called Niox, which acts like a painless suicide pill. Itsuki then appears on TV announcing that the new tool for humankind equivalent to the invention of fire is death. At the end of his broadcast, all the people on the rooftop leap to their deaths. Seizaki sees Ai Magase in the crowd below and suspects that the F written on Inaba's document stands for female. The rail system is shut down after numerous suicides, and the authorities assign Morinaga to coordinate the search for Kaika Itsuki. The Kasumigaeki Vice Minister of Justice Yoshifumi Sakuro explains that Itsuki may not have actually broken any laws. Later, Assistant Officer Hayase Sakuro is assigned to Seizaki's team, who is also the niece of Yoshifumi Sakuro. Itsuki releases another video announcing a new suicide law, which will become the focus of the upcoming election, virtually splitting the candidates into pro or anti-Itsuki factions. Kasumigaeki Police Director of Unit 1, Torao, also joins the investigation team. Days before the election, Seizaki's team have still not located Itsuki or Ai Magase, nor can they find evidence that Itsuki abetted the suicides. However, Seizaki eventually obtains some data on Ai Magase. He explains to Officer Sakuro that Ai Magase was being seen by her uncle, Dr. Kurazu Sakabe. They visit the doctor, who says that Ai was adopted, and when he conducted psychological evaluations on her fellow male students, they all reported the experience of being raped by her merely through her physical presence. Her effect was so strong that even Sakabe was affected by it and eventually resigned his position. Seizaki and Sakuro take time out and practice kendo when Itsuki releases another public statement, proposing a debate on the suicide law at the NHC television studio. Seizaki immediately commits the investigation team to finding evidence Itsuki abetted suicide. Later, Magase calls from investigator Tsusui's phone saying that she wants to bring happiness to the world. Then Tsusui runs onto the road where he is hit by a truck and dies with a smile on his face. On the day of the public debate, no evidence has been found that Itsuki abetted any suicides, and Seizaki disbands the investigation team. Although Ruikiro Namaru is confident of winning the debate and the election, Seizaki tells his former team that he plans to kidnap Itsuki, making them all accomplices, and they decides to join him. The televised debate commences with those speaking against the suicide law speaking first. Itsuki then argues his case. However, Namaru introduces a young boy whose father wants to commit suicide and supports him as a candidate in the election, swaying public opinion against the law. However, Itsuki unmasks the boy and reveals that it is his son, Teo. Itsuki tells his son and all those watching the televised debate that he wants to die so that his ailing son can have his healthy heart and survive, swaying public opinion to support the law. After the debate, Seizaki proceeds with his kidnap plan, separating Itsuki from his wife and son. However, he loses contact with the teams. When he goes to investigate, he finds Assistant Police Inspector Shinobu Kyujian wounded in the car park. Kyujian explains that he shot himself to cause enough pain to live to tell Seizaki that Itsuki's wife was probably Magase, who caused him to want to die of ecstasy after she whispered softly in his ear. Defying all efforts by Seizaki to save him, Kyujian kills himself with his own revolver, and Seizaki realizes that this is her technique to make people suicide. Seizaki receives a call from Sekiro, who has seen Magase, and against his advice she attempts to stop Magase herself. Seizaki races to her location but finds his officers dead and Sekiro missing. Later, he receives a call from Magase on Sekiro's phone in which she calmly explains why she is evil, as she apparently dismembers Sekiro while she is still alive. The votes for and against the suicide law are equal, which enables the law to be enacted in Shiniki. Meanwhile, only Sekiro's death is determined to be a murder, while all the other deaths are considered voluntary suicides. Seizaki is tormented by Sekiro's death and receives a package with 2 eggs, one of which contains a human eye. Ariyoshi Hanta tells Seizaki that he is unable to write anything about the mass suicide as it will not be published. Shiniki begins enacting the suicide law and the euthanasia drug Niox becomes widely available. The trend for planned suicide begins to spread to the cities of Halifax in Canada and Grenoble in France. Seizaki receives a visit from an FBI agent, Samuel Hardy, who wants to question him about the mass suicide at the NHC Center. Meanwhile, in the USA, President Alexander W. Wood reveals of his sickly youth and his determination to conquer his illness. He becomes a master online game player and helped a female player who eventually married him. In the USA, the government becomes more concerned about the international acceptance of the suicide law after Hartford is the first USA city to adopt the law. Using his usual carefully considered approach, President Wood ponders the law's implications for his country. The president discusses the voluntary suicide law with Mayor Flores of Hartford, which is known as a major insurance center in the United States. Flores claims that he is passing the law in the city because he believes that he is reflecting America's frontier spirit. However, the president advises caution and he pressures Flores to delay. Wood speaks to the president of France about Grenoble adopting the law, but the French president considers it of little importance. Later, the FBI chief informs the president that Ai Magase is suspected to be behind the mass suicides, and Seizaki arrives to provide additional background information on her. He travels with the FBI agent Samuel Hardy to Hartford, where he tracks down a phone call made to the mayor just before he visited the dying patients in the hospital. While Seizaki listens to a recording of the conversation, he suddenly hears Magase's voice speaking directly to him. Evidence points to Magase making the call to Mayor Flores from Germany. President Wood discusses the suicide law with the German chancellor, who surprisingly does not oppose the legislation. Wood seeks counsel with the head of the church, who cannot provide the concrete answer he seeks. Meanwhile, Seizaki and Hardy find the young girl Flores spoke to at the hospital on a bridge preparing to commit suicide, to be with her dead mother. They try to stop her but fail, undecided about which course to take because of a lack of information. President Wood's wife encourages him to follow his instinct. Wood discusses his options with Seizaki, who admits that he is seeking revenge for those close to him who have died because of Magase. Wood appoints Seizaki as a special investigator to be issued with a gun and to return to Japan to be with his family. Meanwhile, Itsuki announces a suicide summit with the leaders of the cities which have adopted the suicide law. Wood announces his own summit of 7 world leaders to discuss the same issue. In a prologue, an excerpt in the Book of Revelation from the Bible describes the Whore of Babylon. President Wood addresses the summit of 7 world leaders and convinces Canada, Italy, Germany, Britain, France, and the European Union to first decide between what is good and what is evil. Before they came to a conclusion, Itsuki makes a public announcement that a girl is preparing to commit suicide by jumping from the top of Shiniki City Hall, but is unsure of whether she wishes to die or not. Itsuki invites Wood to speak to her. President Wood considers the implications of talking to the girl who is considering jumping from the top of Shiniki City Hall, which will be publicly broadcast. She calls herself Kani Kuyo, but Wood and Seizaki suspect that she may be Ai Magase. Seizaki offers to interpret, but Agent Hardy insists on taking the risky role himself, and Wood agrees. Wood tells Kuyo that he does not yet have an answer for her but convinces her to wait until he does, to everyone's relief. Later, Wood realizes that continuity is good and therefore suicide is wrong. But when he tries to communicate with Kuyo, he hears Magase's voice. When Wood leaves the conference room, Seizaki realizes that something is wrong and then finds all the interpreters dead. The security staff are ordered to cut electronic communication and find the president. Seizaki finds Wood on the edge of the roof, prepared to commit suicide even though he admits that it is not a good thing to do. They both realize that Seizaki must kill him to prevent his suicide. He reluctantly shoots him, and then Ai Magase appears on the roof as Kani Kuyo. When Seizaki points his gun at her, she asks him the difference between good and evil. He struggles with his response and a shot is heard. Some time later, a woman resembling Ai Magase alights from a bus at a small village and meets Seizaki's son. And that's the end of the series, guys, so subscribe if you haven't already and turn on notifications so you don't miss out. Until next time, farewell.